Well, let's try to start from the beginning. I mean, the beginning, well, the beginning is one of the main subjects of our meeting because we don't know where the beginning is.
Right.
No? But let's try to go from the beginning of your present life. I mean, I've read about you and I know there was a sort of switch in your life, you know, through your work with a patient. But how was your life previously? How was your life before Catherine's case?
Yes. For me, there have been these two distinct parts to my life. So it was very clearly a BC. As we say in English, BC means antes Christ, so
yeah.
AC. But in English it's called BC and AD, after death. So BC for me is before Catherine.
Before BC.
Yes, it takes that form. And my life was very much structured, and I would say a bit rigid. I was designing the foundation and the structure unconsciously for the work that came after. So for me it became very academic, and that was my life. I was building this structure. I went to a college in the U.S., very academic, Columbia University, Yale University Medical School, became a physician, then a psychiatrist, also my training at Yale, which is a very important and famous university in the United States. And writing papers, scientific papers, book chapters, and becoming a professor, moving up the ranks academically. Moved to Miami, Florida in 1974, becoming professor of psychiatry at the University of Miami and chairman of the psychiatry department at Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami Beach. Very rapid advancement in the academic world. And I had written more than 40 scientific papers and book chapters. And that was my life before Catherine, academically. Otherwise, my life was going, I wouldn't say smoothly, because there was a death of a child in this time before Catherine, and the death of my father. But my marriage was a long-time marriage. My wife and I have now been married 39 years. We met in 1963. I can't even do the mathematics anymore. And we were young, very young, but it was like almas gemelas. It was, love came very quickly, and we're still together after all of these years. But that part was going well, except for the death of my first child, a son, who died in 1971, about 9 years before the therapy with Catherine began. Mm-hmm. And then I had 2 children after that, so they're grown now, and that part was going well. My professional life was going very well also. And I was kind of what a psychiatrist has become these days, a secular priest. So I was more agnostic. I did not believe in reincarnation, not in past lives, very skeptical about these things. I did not believe in New Age, did not know much about it. Much to my embarrassment today, because that meant I did not have an open mind. I had already prejudged these things. And my mind, was following Freud and following the new field of biological psychiatry. And that was my life when Catherine came in and began the second half.
Yeah.
I did not realize this right away, but that was the beginning of the second part of my life.
So we can say that in your present life you have 2 lives, a little bit, no?
Yes, exactly. And it's very different now, because after Catherine and finding out about past lives and spiritual dimensions and masters and all of energies, all of these other areas that I knew nothing about, now I changed completely in terms of my values, in terms of what's important to me and what is not important. But I didn't change the structure. The scientific structure is still there. So everything that happens, I still filter through that lens. That remains.
It's like a base,
Yes.
When you build a building or you paint a painting, you create a base and then you build more creative over that base. No?
Exactly.
So maybe it worked.
It was important for me because I think without that base, I wouldn't have the stability to filter what comes through now. Because in the New Age field now, there's a great deal, or this holistic field, or spiritual psychotherapy, whatever names you want to put on this. There are healing and healers. There's a great deal that is valid, that really works. And I've seen healers and psychics and others from all over the planet. Incredible things I've witnessed. And others who are not at all. Opportunistic and really not real. And I have to be able to filter what's real from what's not. That's where the base helps me a lot.
And what happened when Catherine appeared in your life?
Well, when she appeared in my life, at first nothing happened. Because for 1.5 years we did traditional therapy. She wouldn't take any medicine because she had a lifelong fear of gagging or choking. And so she couldn't take medicine because she had difficulty swallowing.
She couldn't swallow pills?
No. And she had lots of symptoms: anxieties, phobias, depression, insomnia, panic. And so for 1 year, more than 1 year, I treated her with just psychotherapy. I had learned to do this, of course, in my training. We didn't make too much progress, a little bit, but not very much. And so I fell back on a technique that I had learned some years before Catherine, when I was an intern. I had learned how to do hypnosis. Hypnosis is putting people into relaxed states so that they can concentrate, their memory is improved, and their body is very relaxed. It's a normal state. We're all hypnotized every day. When you drive your car and your mind wanders and you forget the last few blocks, but you didn't crash, that's hypnosis. When you're watching a movie and you're so absorbed and concentrating in the movie that you don't hear the people eating popcorn around you, that's hypnosis. Reading a good book and you don't hear the traffic, that's hypnosis.
When you look into the eyes of the person you love, that's hypnosis.
That's hypnosis, oh yes. Okay. A little deeper state. And there are many levels. So I use that with Catherine to put her into a deep state of concentration, because she could not remember much from her childhood.
Can we stop for a minute and we go back with this story?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Volvemos en un minuto con el Dr. Brian Weiss. Well, then, what happened with Catherine when you start hypnotizing her?
She was one of those people that can go very deeply. And the first time she went very deeply, she did go back to her childhood and remembered traumas from her childhood, significant traumas. And yet her symptoms persisted. She was remembering with emotion, which we call catharsis. And yet her symptoms were still there. So I thought, we have to go back even farther. Maybe instead of 5 years old, because she was remembering when she was 5, something happened when she was 3. And so the next session I told her, go back to the time when your symptoms first began, thinking that she would go back to a younger age. Yeah. And she went back about 4,000 years, because she took that literally.
You opened a new door, a new big door.
Yes, for both of us. She did not believe in past lives either. And she was with a different name and a different face, and describing with vivid details and emotions a life where she drowned in a flood or a tidal wave nearly 4,000 years ago. Her baby being torn from her arms by the force of the water. She did not have any children in this life. And so this was confusing to me, because the drama, the level of details that she was seeing visually was very strong, not like her daydreams, not like imagination. And she had 2 other lives that first time, and then she came out of the hypnosis. And already I could see changes beginning in her. She looked more relaxed. She was very tense, very anxious person. By the next week, she told me that her fear of choking or gagging had disappeared. This does not happen from imagination. She was sleeping better. Her anxiety was less. And week by week, as we went through the therapy, all of her symptoms disappeared without having to use any medicine in her case. And then that was shocking to me. I still had trouble believing because I was so academic, so rational, so left-brain, so skeptical at first. And yet something very weird or bizarre happened. About the 4th or 5th session, she died in one of these ancient lifetimes, floated above her body, finding a beautiful light, being replenished by the light. And she told me there were 2 people there at the light to see me, my father and my son, both of whom had died before the sessions with Catherine began. And she told me my father's name. She told me about my son's medical condition. She did not know any of these details, and there was no place to look it up. And she told me other very secret facts.
Of your own life?
Of my own life.
So that confirmed that something new was happening?
Yes, because I knew, and she is not an investigative reporter, not working for the FBI. She was a laboratory technician in the hospital. There was no place to look up this information. This was before the internet, before people had access to all of this information. My father didn't even have an obituary, neither did my son. There was no place to look up the details. And she knew the details. And I asked her, where are you getting this information? And she said, it's coming from spirits that are around me. They're telling me. They're not in bodies. And that, to me, changed my world that instant. Because then I knew that if she was right about my father and my son, I believe she was telling me the truth about past lives also. And then,
was that scaring for you?
Yes, yes. Scary and comforting at the same time. Comforting because my father and my son
were somewhere.
And she said they were with these spirits. Their spirits. They were somewhere. They were alive. They didn't die when their physical bodies died. Scary because my whole worldview was turned upside down. And I didn't know that this other world existed. And here I was finding it out. That was the very moment when I knew, because I knew deep down, that she was telling the truth.
The truth. A new truth for you and for the world.
Yes.
And you went on with her, meeting new lives and
Yes.
knowing more about reincarnation.
Yes, she had about 10 or 12 lifetimes. And after that, she didn't need it anymore because she was cured. Those were the lifetimes that had a connection to her present life as Catherine. And then when she resolved those issues, it healed all of her symptoms. Along the way...
she was healing the main traumas from those 12 lives that were still affecting her.
Exactly. And along the way, she kept giving me messages from these masters. Messages about life and death and why people are here, what's the purpose of life. And since they were so correct about my father and my son, I was recording these sessions exactly. Because Catherine I was seeing in 1980, and 81, and 82. This is now 26 years ago. And I was recording every session word by word. So I did not write Muchas Vidas, Muchos Sabios for many years after Catherine because I was concerned with my reputation and my career. I had no intention to go public about this.
That was your fear?
That's right. And I had a very good position as chairman of the psychiatry department. This was jeopardized if I go public. Eventually I decided to do this with my wife's support and because we had come through so many things, through times when we had no money at all in the beginning, the death of a child, all of this together that we needed when I decided to go public.
But you faced your new and your deepest mission here.
Yes, that was part of it. Because since that time, it's been 26 years, I've now worked with more than 4,000 patients in my office, individually doing regressions. A lot.
A lot of people.
A lot of people. And people from all over the world, but also in groups. So if we add up all the numbers of people that I've had in groups during regression sessions, like here in Buenos Aires and Mar del Plata and Punta del Este, and also Tokyo and Osaka and London and Madrid and Barcelona and everywhere. It's more than 100,000 people. And many of them have had experiences and written to me and confirmed their experiences, validated their experiences, had healing. So it's a huge number of people. But at that time, there was one, Catherine. So I taped every session, and I did for many years with other patients. And when I wrote the book, I wanted it word for word. So the editor edited the parts from me, like my story, where I went to school, or this and that. But I told them, you cannot edit from the tapes her part, because every word may have a meaning that I'm not aware of yet. Every paragraph, I don't know. Maybe there's something in it that I don't realize yet. Don't change that. Thank God for that, because I've had so many validations over the years that I didn't know at the time. For example, I was confused with Catherine's first session. How could she die in a flood or tidal wave? She was describing a life in the Near East, which I saw as, wow, this is not an area where they get tidal waves or hurricanes. But she was probably on one of the islands in the Mediterranean, such as Thera. And although the year wasn't exactly correct, when the volcano in Thera, which we now call Santorini, erupted almost 4,000 years ago, it created gigantic tidal waves, 100-feet waves, that went all the way, covered the islands, destroyed the civilization on Thera and other islands, and went all the way to Greece, the Near East, northern Egypt, with tidal waves, tsunami.
Yeah.
And that's probably what she was describing. So a geologist sent me that years later. And so I'm glad I didn't change things, because so many people have responded to those words. I wanted to keep them pure, exactly what she was saying, word for word.
And do we all have several past lives?
I think we do now. You know, every question you ask, boy, it has resonances at deeper levels, because I've thought about these questions myself. And I've asked people in the deep states, for example, how do the numbers fit? Like, there are more people than ever before. Where do the souls come from? Because if we're all having past lives, and now the population is larger, how does this fit? That's that scientific, rational part of me, which is always questioning to make sure it's real. And the answer that comes back most often is that this is not the only place where there are souls. Souls exist in many dimensions. And
not even planets. You mean other levels, other kinds of, other dimensions, not physical places.
See. So it may be physical places, but it can be non-physical dimensions too, as modern physics is talking about now. So it may be that a soul is here for the first time, but it's not a new soul being created. It's coming from another place. And so I think most of us have had past lives, but occasionally a new soul comes in. I don't think it would start in Buenos Aires, because it's too complicated. Maybe it starts in a little village learning about agriculture and earth, and what are these strange things called people, and why do they act in this way? So, but you don't get to the Buenos Aires until later.
And why does a soul need to reincarnate?
I think that this is a large school here, that we have lessons
here
to learn.
On Earth.
Earth, exactly. Lessons of compassion, love, charity, hope, nonviolence. All of these lessons, patience.
It's a hard school.
It's a hard school. This is the hard place. This is the hard school. The other side, what people call heaven, which may have many different dimensions and levels also, that's not so hard. But here, in this school, we have physical bodies. We have pain.
And that hurts.
It hurts. Grief, loss, people die. We have illnesses, we have diseases. It hurts. So it's a very hard school. But it's a wonderful school, because here we have physical love. We have sensations, smells. We can see the sky and the waters. And it's a great school. It's a physical school. It's very, very difficult, but it's a good school.
It's like school.
It's like school.
We remember our own schools in that terms.
Exactly.
We come back in a minute. Enseguida volvemos.